This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the Candace Owen documentary that the Daily Wire launched when she's talking about BLM and George Floyd and Derek Chauvin and the trial and the big lie and all the money that was raised and what they did with it. So I watched it last night. I was, those of you who know, who watch and follow the page, I was at Comic-Con this weekend. That's why you haven't seen me in a couple days. And I did well, by the way. Thank you guys for following and supporting and liking my other endeavors outside of Black Tea News. But there's so much I wanted to talk about, but I was really tired. I was going to go home and I was over at my parents' house. And we're like, oh, we're going to watch Candace Owens documentary. I'm like, oh gosh, I could talk about it tomorrow. So I went ahead and watched it. Was tired, but went ahead and finished it. And so I want to talk about that. Also, big debate in Michigan. Yeah, Tudor Dixon versus Gretchen Whitmer. I was actually listening to it live as I was setting up my booth and everything. And I got to say, Whitmer lost that. You guys, if you follow social media, you know that what I thought about that. Herschel Walker also went against Warnock. And Herschel Walker, people are saying he has the best debate coaches ever. Because it looked like he took that. And so he had a lot of great lines with Warnock. And Warnock has a lot of rhetoric that he spews, but there were some good zingers and some substance coming out from Herschel Walker. Is he still the most articulate person in the world? No, but he still pulled it out. So kudos to people who were helping him out and training him and getting him prepped. I'm impressed all around by some stuff that I'm seeing come out. There's so much news that's happened over the past couple of days and that it could talk about, but only got an hour that I want to push out here. So let's get to it. But before we jump into, oh gosh, we're also talking about Ulta Beauty as well in the ad that they put out for a podcast that they're doing, because it did get some major backlash. And you will see why after we play it. But before we jump into everything, please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website, different articles that we have at the website, different videos that we have. Please make sure that you're sharing, that you're subscribing, that you're liking, that you're pushing stuff, that you're tagging people saying, hey, watch Black Tea News, all that stuff. I very much appreciate it. If you like what I do here, you'd like to support, please consider going to blacktnews.com/donate and leaving a gift there. I appreciate everyone who has done that, everyone who continue to do that. It costs to stream, it costs to run my website, it costs to travel, it costs to do all those things, the software that I use, it all adds up. So I thank you, everyone who wants to help with that overhead. It's very much appreciated to continue going and to continue growing Black Tea News. Also check out different merchandise that we have at the store, like the goat hoodies, goat t-shirts. I do have those in different colors. They were watching the intro and they probably only saw this shirt with the Trump make crack whack again, which is a reference to the story about the Biden administration giving crack pipes to people. And they said, oh, you're promoting Trump. That tells me what kind of person you are. And I don't know. I think they end up leaving the page, but I was going to say what it tells me that I'm a person who likes gas under $2. What does that say about me? Like, just people had all sorts of reasons for supporting Trump in 2016. They'll have all sorts of reasons. They had all sorts of reasons why they support him in 2020, and they'll have all sorts of reasons if he decides to run in 2024. Though I still think it's going to be somebody else. I don't know if he's that invested in doing it again. I know we hear rhetoric and stuff, but it's still a long ways out, and he's I don't know. We'll just see. But yeah, I'm missing low gas prices and inflation not being crazy and energy independence and all that stuff. So folks got all kind of crazy ideas about why they support Biden, and none of them are really good right now. Also got, you're not that special got the Roe and Casey board and stuff. All kinds of stuff you guys can check out on the website. As I said, I was at Comic-Con this weekend. If you guys want to check out any of my books, if you go to the merchandise page, there's a banner with my books on there. You guys can follow, or my book website, or just find me on Amazon. But yeah, I had a really good weekend. So if anyone's interested, I told this story on my Ninja Dust page, and I shared it on my other socials and Black Tea and stuff. One person came to my table, and they were their eye was caught by my poster for The Color of God's Eyes, and which I do have a banner. Let me just pull it up really quick. So they saw the banner of The Color of God's Eyes, and so they came over and they picked up the book and they started reading through it, which I quickly describe it as like, think the American Civil War meets X-Men. And so he reads through, he's like, wow, that's really powerful. Just reading, I guess, a couple lines. And then he tells me about how the Hunt for Red October got made into a movie, partly because the producer, whoever screenwriter was reading it, and he thought the first line was so powerful. And so he turned to the person who's with him. He's like, this story is about, a young woman discovering her power and discovering who she is. And so I'm like, well, I got the sequel here too. He immediately just opens his wallet, pulls out money, and buys a sequel, and then picks up another book and gets 3. And so that was a really nice moment. One of the highlights of, the convention. And then, but especially because as he starts to leave, I turn to my sister and we're just like, we don't even remember what the first line is. so I opened the book and I read it again, and I was just like, yeah, I'm a good writer. So yeah, anyway, you can check out my stuff. It was just funny to me because me and my sister were just like, gosh, what, because he's going on and on about it, and I have a lot of books that I have published, so I'm just like, what is the first line? What is the first line? Well, I don't even remember what he's talking about, but it was very flattering. So just wanted to share that moment. Also want to encourage you guys to just check out and also support the Bride of Michigan PAC. I'm in the studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. But they do great work. I'm glad to work with them. I got a commercial that hope to be dropping very soon about like Prop 3 in Michigan, and hope to make all the difference in the world. I believe we can. So I'm very appreciative of them. But if I say something today that triggers you, nobody cares. They definitely don't care. And I certainly don't care. Okay, I don't have a meme for you guys today, so we're just going to jump into the stories. First one, just off the rip, I want to talk about Candace Owens' movie. If you haven't seen one of the trailers that they dropped, here's a trailer for The Greatest Lie Ever Sold.
Black Lives Matter released their 990 IRS filings. They collected $80 million. Where is that money?
It's not here. Everything looks worse than it was.
Where have you seen that money impacted throughout the city? So my producer just sent me a link. It is just shocking to me because of how much money was raised to think that where he lived, the bills weren't being covered. Super frustrating, but that's a dead end, so. And here's where it gets really interesting. Ready for some BLM pride? Another $200K went to escorts, BDSM workers, strippers, peep show workers, phone sex operators, and webcam performers. And then at that moment, it became personal. And I thought, not only am I going to say the truth, I am going to scream the truth louder than you can scream the lies.
So yeah, I watched it last night, and I overall thought it was good, well worth watching. There's a lot of content that I was really following the story very closely. Watched a lot of the trial more way than I didn't watch the whole entire thing more than the average viewer. I've looked into BLM. I've reported on BLM and what they've spent their money on. So there were things in the documentary that were interesting and new to me. I'm more interested to know how other people who haven't been invested in following all these stories as much, how will feel about it and their kind of pure reaction to it. But there were three parts to the film, really. There was looking at George Floyd and his death. There was Derek Chauvin, and then they talked about BLM. So the portion with George Floyd in describing that day, going to the food cups, and the police and the escalation, the non-compliance, the getting on the ground, which George Floyd actually requested. He like wouldn't get in the car. He was saying he was claustrophobic, which he was there in a car, so that didn't track. But he actually requested to get on the ground himself. And by the way, first time I watched the long video of the altercation and not just the knee on the neck appearance video. And I say appearance because if you watch from another angle, he's not actually on the neck of George Floyd, which was stunning, when a revelation when you found that out during the trial. But when I first watched that long form video, it was just sickening to know the result at the end. And when he requested himself to get on the ground, knowing that at that point he was just really sealing his fate. I thought her portrayal, because she went to go talk to his roommates, and they talked about how George Floyd would pray in the morning, how prayed with them, especially like that morning that he died. He prayed for like several minutes with them, and he would read his Bible. And so people say George Floyd was trying to get his life together. He's trying to change, and I don't know, people on the right, it seems like he was a criminal. He did this X, Y, and Z. And yes, he was addicted to fentanyl. He was with his drug dealer. His drug dealer was literally in the car that day. Okay. He did have a past criminal record. He was there trying to buy stuff with fake cash. So there, two things can be true at the same time. But I think one thing that Candace, the story, the documentary ended with was addiction is terrible, and it's complicated, and it is a sickness in our society. And I empathized because I have people in my family who've been addicted to drugs. I have a relative who overdosed on fentanyl, and to just how it went from one escalation to the end, how it got there, it's just really, really sad. I think obviously they painted or showed in the story, how in the movie, how people put him into martyr status. That's not something obviously George Floyd did or asked because he died. That's something that society decided to do, whether it was because we caught up in the motion. A lot of people did it for money, for power, which it was explored, but I think could have been explored even deeper. There's it just kind of even tapped on the political stuff just a little bit. It was more like, hey, Black Lives Matter mismanaged these funds. Even like where he lived, the roommates, those bills weren't covered. They wouldn't tow the car. George Floyd's car was just sitting there. His family didn't even like come to get his stuff. His neighbor said that they never even really saw his family. So it did kind of paint the picture that his family was, I don't want to say profiting, but they were elevating. They were talking a lot about his death, and obviously got money, and obviously got fame, and got all this notoriety. But the people who were closest to him at the time when he passed were like, we ain't never seen him. They didn't ask for his stuff. Then his his portion of the rent still isn't being paid, or it caught us in a bind. His car is still sitting out there, which Candace Owens, they took care of some of those bills. So, I mean, kudos to them, but it didn't paint his family in a very positive light. And they weren't in the documentary. I don't know if she asked at all. I'd imagine they probably wouldn't participate. So I thought overall, George Floyd, they did cover her infamous video, when she was like, I don't support George Floyd. And that went crazy viral on social media. It was a Facebook, no, maybe it was an Instagram post, or maybe it was Facebook, one of the two. And then showed a little bit of the world and how they came at her for it. and a lot of people had negative reactions to it. I had very mixed feelings about it, and I did like comment on it. At the time, I wasn't negative like some people were, but Dave Chappelle, said some terrible stuff about her. Other people said terrible stuff, and she said at the point in the trailer, she's like, "That's when it was personal, how everyone kind of came at her, you know." And then she started digging deeper and digging deeper, and didn't like how everyone was so focused on one way when it seemed like everyone's attention was being directed toward this sort of narrative. So that is what kind of sent her down on this journey. And no, I don't feel that it was appropriate to have lifted George Floyd up into this martyr status. Like, I understand the movement and some of the things that they were claiming they were trying to accomplish. But you have to also remember, this was all going at a time when the world was locked down, and there are people who actually couldn't go attend funerals of loved ones. And he had like multiple ones where there's all these politicians and dignitaries and stuff going to, Hezekiah Walker, who's a famous gospel singer who trashed Trump because Trump was like, your church is essential. Like, he signed some kind of executive order. And Hezekiah Walker wrote a post saying, our church shouldn't be opened up until the White House is open for visits. And I'm like, why would you dictate your church whether it can or cannot be open to when the government's going to open up the White House for visitors to just roam through? That's not an essential thing. So that was wild to me. But where was he? He was singing at George Floyd's funeral. So the world had just gone totally bonkers. Double standard when that happened. They were like, you're bad if you want to protest against the lockdowns, you're killing your grandmother, all that other kind of stuff. But as soon as like BLM, it was like Summer of Love with all the riots and all that stuff. It was okay for Governor Gretchen Whitmer to, trash all the people who are protesting, but it was okay for her to go out and do it, So the world just totally showed their colors and lost all sort of rationality when this happened. And she also covered how different companies were basically extorted to donate, to give. There was one particular store in LA, and a blogger threatened them. They're like, I'm going to do these really, really bad posts about you if you don't apologize to Chrissy Teigen, and if you don't give X amount of money. That was a really interesting nugget that was in there that I didn't follow that story. So that was interesting. Second portion of the film was Derek Chauvin. Now, this was a moment that I did not think was very flattering of Candace Owens, and I don't think that she should have put this in her documentary. But I don't know. I guess I don't know why you would put that in there. It just wasn't flattering. So she was very upset because Derek Chauvin and his mother didn't want to participate in her documentary. And the reason being, and at least this is the reason what they gave. It could be more reasons, but they're trying to get an appeal. And the lawyers didn't think it was a good idea. So she ranted and was like going off to the camera because she thought the lawyers were stupid, and that public opinion has already decided, and I guess they needed this as their moment to speak on the matter. Candace Owens, love her or hate her, she does have a reputation, and some people won't ever watch this because her name is associated with it, and those are just the facts. They have no idea how the documentary is going to turn out. They don't know how it's going to be edited. They don't know anything like that. So why would they risk that? Like, if you're in a criminal trial situation, why you don't talk too much? Like, it was crazy when Alec Baldwin went out and had his interview with George Stephanopoulos about the Rush shooting, because there's definitely some stuff that they could use on the interview against him. So no, I don't think it would have been a good idea for them to possibly blow their shot at an appeal to come on a Daily Wire documentary that Candace Owens was doing. And so I thought the way that she went off about it was really strange. And it didn't make her come off well at that point. It was just a rageful sort of immature moment, I guess. I don't know. Um, I didn't like that. But she had some other people who spoke up for Derek and said, "Hey, how all the media was reading into the look on his face from a still, trying to paint him as some kind of white supremacist, racist guy, that they were, said that wasn't accurate." But also, they didn't dive that much into the trial. Like, they did play the part when the lawyer, got them to see the different angles and admit that he wasn't actually on George Floyd's neck. But even that point, could have been, I mean, it's called The Greatest Lie Was Ever Sold. That was a big, big narrative that moved so much of this BLM, George Floyd mania from the knee on the neck. So the fact that he wasn't actually on his neck from a different angle a different perspective can make all the difference in the world. And people would still say he shouldn't have been on him like that anyway. But the knee on the neck was the powerful narrative. And they could have built that up some more. To me, it kind of felt like a moment that wasn't big enough in the documentary. I felt like it could have been so much longer. It could have been like a I don't know, a 6-part series or something like that at the very least. But they didn't dive too much into the trial. I mean, the closing trial itself from Chauvin's lawyer, and man, he sure did try his heart out. I think that alone was like 3 hours, and I did watch that entire thing, but it was long. He sure did try, but I don't believe they even went into how there were all these activists or an activist or so on the court, and how and all the reasons why he didn't really have a fair trial from jump. So they did show like politicians weighing in and how they wanted a particular outcome, but it's all very still fresh in our minds. It happened not too long ago. A couple years down the line, if you want like an in-depth documentary about what that happened during that time, if you wanted some grasp of the trial, this isn't like the thing that you would watch. So but the third part, the BLM stuff, is probably the most prominent, the most important aspect of it. They go into the finances, how much money they raised off of this and how they spent the money. And so there's been a lot of big talk lately, and not just like right-wing people. There's people who have been asking for a while, people who've been associated with the organization, or people who've had children, or other people who've died and they've used their name to raise money, and they've asked, where did that money go? And we've covered some of that on the show. I've done an article talking about how Christians got duped by Black Lives Matter, and talked about some of the money that they gave to Black organizations, but they were like gay organizations, very like LGBT stuff. Like, she talked about BDS and all the other kind of stuff. She really dove into some really weird, obscure sexual stuff that they sent the money to, but also Patrice Cullors, how she, set up money for her wife and her baby's daddy, and how their companies got a lot of money. I think because her brother was a graffiti artist, and he got like almost paid $1 million to be for her security company. It was just a lot of money that they spent, clearly to enrich themselves, buying up mansions, all kinds of stuff. Now, Black Lives Matter did comment on this, and they said today or someday soon, Candace Owens will release a purported documentary that will attempt to further divide Black people and uplift white supremacy. From what we've seen, we know there will be lies, hateful speech, racism, homophobia, and or transphobia embedded in her work, which BLM, G, and F does not condone. As a community, we are experiencing an attack on Black freedom fighting, which is part of a centuries-long machine meant to terrorize and dismantle Black liberation. We must push back against any false information regarding the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation with clear, accessible data. As reported on most recently filed IRS Form 990, less than 10% of BLM, G, and F's budget was used for operating costs, which demonstrates the foundation's efficiency. Okay, so they're not spending a lot on the operating costs, but they're giving it a lot to other organizations and stuff that are uplifted by some of their friends. They're paying their friends off, their families off, and they're also giving to organizations that are like not fighting police brutality, that are very, very, very focused on trans issues, LGBT stuff. Now, if that's what everyone knew the organization was going to do, that's one thing. And if you thought that you were giving to a pro LGBT group, and that's why all these people who had Black Lives Matter in their profiles were given all this cash, that's one thing. But I don't believe that's what majority people thought that they were investing in sex workers and all that kind of stuff when they gave their money after George Floyd died. I don't think that's what people thought that was going to. But I tried to warn a lot of people as this stuff was happening. I've been following BLM for a long time, basically since their inception. I remember when they first launched their website, and I've said this before, but I looked on their website, and I'm paraphrasing because I do not remember. I don't have a screenshot. But they had some kind of commentary about how they were going to focus more on trans women, aka men who believe that they're women, as opposed to cisgendered men, because they're discriminated against more. I'm like, why can't we just focus on helping Black men? So I'm like, they clearly have an agenda, a skewed agenda here, if they're telling you straight up who gets the priority here. So I also my sister had a friend who went to a BLM meeting, and they didn't even talk about police brutality stuff. They talked about just gay stuff the whole time. And that's not why they went. That's not why they wanted to get involved. And so that was the last meeting they went to. It was all about LGBT stuff. And again, if you want to support LGBT stuff, that's one thing. I don't think that's why a lot of people have gotten involved or intended to get involved to fund all these more obscure LGBT groups. They also said the IRS form from the 990 also reports that BLM, G, and F distributed more than 33% of the total dollars raised, which means that $25 million in grants and other assistance have been given to approximately 50 different Black-led organizations. Yeah, they'll be given to Black-led organizations, but that doesn't mean that they're focusing on Black particular issues, especially not regarding to police brutality and expungement of people's records or other things like that. They're being focused on LGBT stuff, yes, led by Black people or non-binary, but they'll still be non-binary, or they'll be trans, or they'll be all that other kind of stuff. So that they have a focus, but it's not really police brutality. That's what they're selling on the front end, but on the back end, they have all these other agendas. It says, as misinformation begins swirling online, please keep our transparency center saved. Abolition is one of the greatest social movements in history. We will not be deterred, intimidated, or distracted from that work, both from internal and external attempts to tear us down. We will continue investing in our community to turn the moral tide of the world against policing, jails, prisons, and violence. We will continue to ensure the narratives around the globe are as abolitionist and Black as possible. We will continue to create structures that allow for the fullness of Black joy to be experienced. So then Candace Owens had retweeted their thread and then had her trailer, and she said, "I broke Black Lives Matter." So I think the documentary is well worth watching. Again, I'm very curious how people will react who haven't followed this all in depth as much as I have. There were still things that were interesting to me in it from someone who's been very, very invested in it. It could have been way longer. It could have this film. There's so much other content, and also like angles to attack this from. Um, and it was there's just way too much, just way too much to go through, and just I don't remember what the runtime was. It felt long because I was tired. Um, but it still felt a little light because I just knew there was so much more that you could say. But the couple of minutes spent on going through BLM and their money and how they spent it, that the millions of dollars raised, 83 million, 93, whatever it was very interesting and well worth people's times. And I think with so much information that's come out about BLM now, it's very embarrassing when I see anyone who has that hashtag still up. And people will say, well, the organization, you have to separate the organization from the movement. I don't think that's appropriate because the movement has been around for a while, a long while. It's not like they popped up in 2020 or just overnight. You know, the premise also of the movement versus the organization, the premise of the movement is that Black people are being particularly targeted. Now, I do think Black people are being particularly targeted, but I think the ideology that's being directed toward Black people, in the cultural Marxism and all the other stuff, is how people are being targeted. Are they being targeted by police? There's not there could be some data to support it, but I've talked about how there was a Reuters data scientist who went through BLM and the premise that they push and debunked it. And Reuters ended up firing him. And he's in a lawsuit with Reuters. I kind of wish he was got to really speak or something on the documentary to lay all this information out. But you can go look him up on a Substack. We went through it. I think the whole thing, maybe one day on the broadcast, when that story was really kind of breaking. But the premise that they're selling isn't true, and the fact that they've sold this premise for so long has actually hurt Black communities, and there's evidence for that as well. So it was a good documentary. I didn't like it as much as Matt Walsh's, but it's well worth watching. I think Candace, though, I'll just critique this. I think sometimes she's a little heavy-handed when she's doing interviews on pushing the narrative where she wants it to obviously go. But I did think the quality was very good, and like I said, there were moments that were quite juicy, and I think it'll be very helpful for people who haven't done the deep dive on a lot of stuff. But there's still so much more to say and to go through, and I would love if someone really did an in-depth documentary really tearing down BLM, because this looked at their finances and how they enriched themselves as a result of the lie and BLM and the riots. But there was so much more you could have went into with even just that premise alone. So go watch it for yourselves. It's on Daily Wire's streaming platform if you still have it. I still have my subscription from when I did What Is a Woman. So go ahead and watch it yourself. Okay, let's move on. There were some really interesting debates that happened. Like I said, I was listening to the debate for Michigan between Tudor Dixon and Governor Gretchen Whitmer on Thursday when I was setting up, at Motor City Comic Con, and I just to be frank, I was a little surprised at the job that Gretchen Whitmer did. I thought she'd be better at debating, and I was talking to my sister about this afterwards. I'm like, Gretchen Whitmer didn't do a very good job. I'm just like, how did she even win her, primary? Like, she just didn't bring it. And because I'm thinking about some of the people she ran against, I'm just like, she beat Al Said. I just would think that Al Said would probably be able to out debate her. And so she reminded me that they select these people through convention, and she talked about the inner politics and how there was so much drama going on and how people were upset how all these people took over their convention and got her and Jocelyn Benson and Dana Nessel through, and the drama that they had within the Democrat Party. So she was telling me, remind me of some of the inside baseball, how we even got the result that we got with her in that primary. But yeah, she didn't do a very good job. Now she has a rough record to defend. She really does. But she needlessly lied about things that were on tape. I'm going to show you guys an example. For example, she lied about, well, not lied, but she tried to make it seem like Tudor Dixon was just pushing rhetoric. And that's what she kept saying. She's just rhetoric, no facts. But there's evidence. So when someone has evidence of the thing that they say that happened, and you just say that it's rhetoric, you're just gaslighting, and you're a liar and you're dishonest. I also thought it was a bad look, and I think that it will probably be a bad look to independents. When they asked about COVID and what she did, what could have done better, with hindsight, with the gift of hindsight, and she goes on to talk about how, well, you got to remember it was a novel virus and there are people dying, etc., and just trying to relive the horrors of that beginning and the decisions that she made, and she's like, were there things we could have did different? Of course, but that she glossed over, that didn't give specifics. And Tudor Dixon was able to lay out no, you did the worst things that you possibly could have done. So I do have a clip of Tudor laying into her. So let's watch that.
Well, the governor wants you to believe that she did listen to the experts, but we have the letter from the Nursing Home Association that said, whatever you do, don't send COVID positive patients into nursing homes. And yet the governor did. When Andrew Cuomo even backed off of this, Governor Whitmer doubled down. She even tried to hide the final report of the numbers of how many deaths we had. In fact, she's tried to hide a lot from this pandemic. She tried to hide, or she did hide effectively, why her Department of Health and Human Services director left. In fact, she even paid him off with a secrecy agreement. The same with unemployment. What a debacle to have $8.5 billion fraudulently sent out. Now I've got people bringing bills from the state up to me, begging me to forgive the unemployment that she's trying to get back because she accidentally sent $8.5 billion out. And what about our students that she kept locked out of schools and wouldn't listen to parents when they begged her to let them play? Let them play. She wouldn't even listen.
So, yeah. And she didn't even talk about how you couldn't go out on a boat if you had a motor, how you couldn't travel between. Maybe she did mention something about going between your own houses. There were so many things that didn't make sense that we weren't allowed to do. You had to control who could come into your own home, but the traveling between your two houses you couldn't do. It was just a lot. And then she broke her own rules, which she did. Maybe she mentioned a little bit. But that was a good segment. There's so much more that she could have said, but mentioning the payoff, that was great, because that was a big sleazy story going on. Mentioning that the reported numbers were different, which I don't even really think Whitmer contested much of that stuff or tried to explain it. Maybe she feels, there's that saying, if you're explaining, you're losing. So a lot of things that Tudor's throwing out there, and these are facts, maybe she just is trying to ignore it and not give it more oxygen. But I think she should have tried to debunk. We can't really debunk it, but explain some things, I guess, from her side. But she just tried to brush her off or just ignore some stuff and try to act like she was just all rhetoric. Example, I'm going to show you this exchange that they had with talking about policing and defund the police, which crime is up. Not all different crimes are up, but there's some that are up, like auto carjacking, for example. Even kids are stealing cars and stuff. It's just really wild right now. Homicides and stuff are up. But Gretchen Whitmer and Tudor Dixon, they have different visions on what we should do. And Whitmer really botched this, in my opinion. So oh no. Not sure why that's not playing. Let me try that again. I think apologize. I don't know why that sound's not down there. I'm gonna do it. Okay, I'll post a separate video, but I'll just walk you through it. So Tudor Dixon explained that Gretchen Whitmer, she said that she supported the spirit of defund the police. And that's true. It's on tape. As a matter of fact, here's a
So do you support the defunding? Because, for example, in Minneapolis, in Minneapolis City Council is proposing to redo what policing is. But specifically, do you think that the defunding, would you be someone who supports the defunding movement, which is to take money specifically from police departments and put them into education, for example?
I think you do all those other things. You don't need all the money that's going to the police department. So yeah, I mean, the spirit of it, I do support that spirit of it. I think.
So there, she said, I support the spirit of defund the police. That's fact. That's what she said. It's what she said. So when Tudor Dixon mentioned that, Gretchen Whitmer, when it went back to her for her rebuttal, she said that my opponent is, she has a lot of rhetoric, but she's low on facts. And so when it went back to Tudor, she said, it must be so embarrassing for the governor that it's on tape. And of course, it is on tape. It is on tape. Now, again, she just keeps trying to push it off like the Republicans are just saying crazy stuff. And I think that's just I think that's the strategy between her and Nessel and Benson, that all the Republicans, they just say crazy stuff. They're just rhetoric. You can't trust them. They're lunatics. They're unserious people. The other two won't even debate, like DePerno and Karamo. Whitmer's the only one of the big three who decided that they would debate their opponent. And she's trying to brush her off. But the fact of the matter is that it is on tape. And I'm totally going to make a video. It's going to trash her for this particular. Very, very stylish and nice. I just didn't have the time because I was at Comic-Con. But it's on tape. And you can't ignore that fact. But so they're gaslighting not just Tudor, not just the Republican voters, everybody. She's gaslighting everybody about something that's on tape. So I don't understand needlessly lying about something. Now, she could have just explained the context of the conversation. Now, she said she was totally just pandering to that person in that interview. And so she was trying to support it but smart enough to know that she can't say, yes, I support defunding the police. But she wanted to still pander to that side. So she says, I think if you do all the things that you should be doing, then you don't need as much money in policing. That's the point that she said, right? So wouldn't it have been better to just explain that context and then have the Democrats and maybe some independents going like, well, maybe she has a point. Wouldn't that have been better than just pretending that it didn't exist? And like she never said that at all? And like Tudor was making it up? Wouldn't that have been better? So, so I was hyped, like listening to all this. My sister thought I was she's like, you're having a good time over there. Because Tudor was getting her with some good singers. She was, holding her accountable for her record. And Whitmer was just trying to shove it off. I don't think that was a good look with that example. And I don't think it was a good look for the COVID to know that you had all these people who died and knowing that she obviously made mistakes and knowing that she even broke her own rules and to just be like, well, there were some things I could have did, sure. But just to brush it off and to really to not hold herself accountable for her actions. Now, the Democrats will make all kinds of excuses for her, sure. But is everybody going to be like, oh yeah, that you just to let that slide? I don't think that was a good look. I don't think that was a good look. you know, she was also, the first two questions were about abortion. They were asked, would they be willing to respect, because it's on our ballot, you know, with Prop 3. And so Tudor Dixon's like, the people are going to decide on that. And so they asked, like, well, will you respect the people's choices? And and Tudor's like, well, yeah, we'll respect it, which other people can move it through the legislation one way or another. Well, you couldn't move it through the legislation. You'd have to have like something to repeal the amendment. You'd have to change the Constitution again if it passes. But when Whitmer was asked about it, she's like, well, I still have my lawsuit going on for the 1931 ban. So no, her answer isn't, I'm going to respect Michiganders if they vote down this abortion bill, this abortion amendment, which is not just abortion. You guys know I've talked about it a lot. There's a lot of other stuff in it too. But she's saying, well, I'm still got stuff in the works. So no, I'm not going to respect it. That's what she's saying. If Prop 3 fails, she's still going to push abortion. She's tweeted about it so many times. If you go on her, you can go on Twitter and you can search people's accounts and you can search by words and see how many that she's had. You know, she's probably since the July or something, there's probably been at least 100 tweets about all this stuff. I was going through trying to count them. I didn't have enough time to get through it all, but she mentioned it so much. It's what she cares about and it's her priority. And she thinks it's going to save her. I hope that she's wrong. She should be held accountable for what she did with the lockdowns. It didn't make sense putting mixing nursing home patients with COVID positive patients. It didn't make sense. There's some people who believe that they were just putting sick elderly people who live there in nursing homes back in their own homes. That's not what happened. They would send young, healthy people even to these nursing homes with COVID. There was one person who was like, do you remember that video of that violent kid hitting that elderly guy who died not too long after that? But that happened in a nursing home. He was COVID positive. He should have been in a mental institution or whatever. And they sent him to the nursing home, and he beat on that elderly man. My aunt got sent to a nursing home to recover, and they didn't take good care of her. She ended up calling 911 after she caught pneumonia to take her back to the hospital. She did it herself. And they tried so hard to send my dad to a nursing home after he was ready to leave the hospital. And we're like, no, we want him. Bring him to us. Like, we don't want him to go to nursing home. And they tried so hard. And they're like, well, it could look like you guys are refusing care, and then that could affect the insurance. And I'm just like, are they threatening us? And so eventually we did get him home, and we took care of him and helped him recover and walk. And there were people who came out to the house and helped him with his therapy and all the other kind of stuff. But I hate to think what would have happened if he would have been alone and still isolated in the nursing home after having to spend so much time in isolation in a hospital. There wasn't financial incentives to send people to these nursing homes, and they really, really wanted them to go. It was very concerning how much they really pushed for it. Very concerning. Whitmer needs to be held accountable for all this. And I'm glad that Tudor held her feet to the fire. Now, there's something in particular that I thought that could be an opportunity for Dems to attack. I'm not going to mention it because I'm biased and I don't want them to use it. But and I'll let her know if I get a little one-on-one next time I see her between her next debate. But overall, I thought she did a really great job, but I do think she benefited from Whitmer not doing a good job at all. Whitmer didn't do a good job. And again, she had a bad record to try to defend. But her strategy, I think her strategy was just try to make it seem like Tudor is a nobody conspiracy person to not take seriously, so she wouldn't dignify her really with dealing with some of those charges laid against her. But the facts are the facts. And I don't care if you're the governor, you can't just ignore him. Especially when they're on tape, Miss Whitmer. especially when they're on tape. So another debate that was really surprising was Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker went against Reverend Warnock, who's a senator, and he got him with some really good zingers. Particularly, there was one about abortion that people say killed him. So let me just show you guys that real quick.
He told me Black Lives Matter. And if you think about it, Senator, in Atlanta, Georgia, there's more black baby that is aborted than anything. So if Black Lives Matter, why are you not protecting those babies? And instead of aborting those babies, why are you not baptizing those babies?
So the baptizing the babies is such a good line because Warnock keeps saying, I'm a pro-choice pastor. So to me saying you're a pro-choice pastor, which they don't correlate, they don't mix, right? But he's using his authority as a pastor to say, well, even I in this authority recognize a woman's right to choose. And he's trying to use himself as this paragon of virtue, saying, hey, this is okay. When you just should say, hey, as a senator, as a dad, as a human being, like, I'm pro-choice. That's where you can just leave it at. Just say, I'm a pro-choice pastor. That is inappropriate. God is blatantly against abortion. I've written an article about this on Black Teen News, actually written an entire book about it, but I will tell you when you guys can pick up that book. But yeah, Warnock is awful. And so to say you should be baptizing these babies, not advocating for them to be aborted, that's throwing his role as pastor back in his face. Now, Warnock, I don't know why he didn't go on and on about the rumors about Herschel Walker and the paying for an abortion back in the day, which Herschel Walker denies. But he blew that. So Herschel Walker got him with that line. He got him with some other lines as well. But there is a disproportionate amount of Black children who are killed in abortion. In Michigan, the number is 55.6%. That's really high. And we're only 14% of the population here. So I think it's good when people are debating about abortion to not allow the Democrats to just ignore the fact that there is a baby there, which there's another clip from that debate when Warnock has said this a couple times, that the space in that doctor's room is too small for the government. It should be between a woman and her doctor. And Herschel Walker's pointing out, like, what about the baby? The baby is there. So we have to keep reminding people, like, what it is that they're advocating for, that there is a life taken, that there is a human being that is killed in that situation, in that scenario. So he did great with that, but he also got him on some other things too.
Well, first of all, he talked about standing up. You didn't stand up to Chuck Schumer when you could have got a helicopter company here of almost $1 billion. You let it go to New York. You didn't stand up then. You didn't stand up to Biden when he left American people and had 13 military soldiers killed in Afghanistan. You didn't stand up then. So what we can do is, Putin is a bully. And the way you beat a bully, you show strength. Well, Senator Warnock say he stood up. He not stood up to Biden. If he was standing up, he wouldn't have voted with him 96% of the time, which gave us an open border, which gave us high inflation, which gave us crime in the streets. And he talking about standing up. He didn't stand up. He have laid down every time it came around. And you know that, Senator.
It is evident that he has a point.
Yeah, the point is that he beat you, sir. So he's not the most articulate person in the world, but he's laying out the facts. And he also talked about how Warnock has a church who is renting properties out to people, and they're evicting people, not even for being 30 days late, for like $138, $28, really small amounts of money. And Warnock claimed that wasn't true, but the court documents say otherwise. So he lied about that. So Herschel just, laid his feet to the fire, and I wasn't expecting him to come out with a win. So I was watching and reading this stuff go down. I'm just like, did Herschel really pull this out? So kudos to his debate prep team. That's really, really great. Now Obama is he's going to go to Georgia. After Georgia, he's coming to Michigan, and I think he's going to 2 other states as well to try to save the election for some folks. I think I don't think there's anything he can do in Georgia. Kemp is ahead of Stacey by several points, and she's not running a good campaign. She's not running a good campaign at all. When people lose, sometimes you just need to let them go. But they decided to hunker down and try Stacey Abrams again, and she's going to lose again. We'll see if she concedes this time. I don't think that he can do much for Warnock either, especially after Herschel did pretty good in the debate. Because if all they got to say is abortion, 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 then they need more than that, because that's not even a top issue for most people in the country. So if people are going to vote for Kemp, they're probably going to also break for Herschel. And again, Kemp is several points ahead. Maybe there are people who didn't want to support Herschel Walker and were on the fence. I think they'll come home at the end of the day. So I don't think there's anything Obama can do for them. I think it's interesting that Obama is coming to Michigan. Now, if he's going around, to be fair, why wouldn't he just end up coming to Michigan too, if he can do that? But if they feel that they need him to shore up those points, I think that's interesting. And there was a article today by USA Today saying that the lead has shrunk down for Whitmer, according to a Free Press poll, because before it was like 16 points and shrunk down to 11. And the closest person is Dana Nessel versus DePerno. And the lead that Benson had over Karamos shrunk as well. But there's been other polls. Sean Hannity's touting one that had them like in dead heat. I don't know how accurate that one is. The Taft-Gallard poll, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about, had Whitmer up less than 6 points. And that was before the debate. So it's tightening. There's a shot. Engler, he was down. I heard he was down by like 19 points. Something crazy absurd, and he pulled it out. So it's definitely possible to win. And I don't know. It's possible for Obama to I don't know, make a dent, I guess. But Whitmer has a lot to answer for. And the economy's not good. And people can still fill in their pocketbooks, and gas has gone up. Gas has gone up. And it really hasn't gone much less than $4. I mean, it's been like $3.69 was probably the last month, the lowest I saw it, maybe in Michigan, but it's above $4. By the way, Biden was really upset about OPEC, and it looked like he did some quid pro quo kind of threatening with the Saudis. That something along the lines of what got Trump impeached. We're gonna have to talk about that maybe tomorrow. But there's a lot of stuff that's not going well for the Democrats right now. So we're still at a disadvantage, Republicans, because Whitmer has so much money. The Democrats have so much more money compared. They're going to have all these ad buys and other stuff. They've had them for a while. So it's going to be a miracle not to lose by a couple points, I think. But I think it's very possible to win. So we just have to fight, obviously, like we're behind, and work and try to finish the fight. There's so many things at stake, especially the fate of the House and the Senate. The Democrats are going to keep saying that they're trying to fight and defend democracy. But the reason why that's so crazy about all this, the reason why they want to win is so they can so they can kill the filibuster, so they don't have to do bipartisan stuff, so they can maybe pack the courts, which Warnock wouldn't answer on that, which freak people out, especially people on the fence and independents or whatever, because he didn't want to deal with really that and say that he wouldn't do it. So if they pack the courts, that because they didn't like the results of elections, you're going to talk about Republicans for not accepting results of elections. Democrats don't accept results of the elections. They can accept that maybe their person isn't in charge for the time, but they do what they can to undermine that victory by saying Trump was installed by Putin, and that was all based on a Clinton lie. For the longest time, they'll find a way to undercut you until they can find a way to make basically their victories permanent. And that's what another thing that they're trying to do with a lot of these voting bills that they're trying to pass. There's Prop 2 on our ballot in Michigan, but there's also the voting rights stuff that they're trying to get passed. Now, in 2016, Obama himself was like, hey, you can't really rig an election because it is so decentralized, but they're trying to do stuff to centralize it. So we've talked about that before, but they're the ones who can't accept when they lose. So they're trying to pass things to really make losing irrelevant to them ever again. So they're talking as if they're the saviors of democracy while being the biggest threat to it. So, by the way, we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. So these are people who call our Supreme Court illegitimate because the people who picked 3 people didn't get the popular vote, and they're idiots who don't understand what the Senate is supposed to represent the states. So and that we have electoral college, so they call them illegitimate, or some people call them that because they still think that Trump was installed by Putin. So don't tell me about threats to democracy and people not being able to accept the results of the election when we know how these people are and we know the agendas that they're pushing. So good luck to Republican candidates across the board, and it's a good thing that Biden is so ridiculously unpopular. Last thing I want to talk about before I go, I know I'm running over, but I've said that I'd mention it, so I want to bring it up. Ulta Beauty showed this commercial, put this up on Twitter, and people have reacted not good to it.
Now I know I can find love. I know I can still be a performer. I know that I can have a family. I want to be a mom one day, and I absolutely can. And that's why the narrative still has a long way to go, because when I was grieving Boy Dylan, I didn't know those things were even accessible to me.
Yeah, you can't be a mom. You don't have the necessary parts. Now I understand if Ulta Beauty wants to sell makeup to everyone. Why wouldn't they want to sell makeup to everyone? Okay. And especially like men who have to cake it on to try to pass. But how can, if you had white people who were dressing up, changing their skin and stuff to try to be black, we would call that blackface, and we would shame them and we'd mock them and we'd cancel. That's what society would do. But when it comes to drag or trans stuff or whatever, it's totally cool. It's totally cool to do the blackface when it comes to like mocking women, etc. That's why. How can you be a mom? You don't have a womb. Now, I'm not saying that you can't be a mom if you don't have kids. Like, you can still adopt and other sort of stuff. But this person can't be a mom. Did you always be a man? Biden knows you'll always be a man because you still have to sign up for selective service. They can say what they want, but they still want you to get drafted one day. So people are pointing out to Ulta that this is weird and inappropriate. And they're like, well, we want to be inclusive. But how inclusive can you be when you start pushing out other people and coming onto their territory and believing that men can be mom? You'll be a dad. You'll be a dad, but you can't be a mom. That's not what you're going to be. So it's causing some backlash. Some people are saying that they're not going to buy up Ulta again, and etc. So their tweet was, "Trans girls can do it all." Tune into the latest episode of Beauty, of where the host David Lopez sits down with guest Dylan Mulvaney to chat all things girlhood. And that's another thing. They're talking about all things girlhood. You're not a girl. You're not a girl. You're not a girl. And you know, if they want to promote the idea that men can wear makeup, and men do wear makeup, men can just wear makeup. Men can just wear makeup, but you don't have to pretend like they are part of girlhood when they're not girls. So, I mean, people were saying, someone said, I spent a lot of money at Ulta. Guess I'll be going back to Sephora because as a mother and a woman, I find this dude insulting. And they said, we want our channel to be welcoming to people from all walks of life, even people who you may not agree with. And someone said trans girls are boys, actually. And they said, at Ulta Beauty, we believe that beauty is for everyone. And we kindly request that everyone be treated with respect on our channels. So they sure did reply to quite a few people, it looked like. But I don't understand why this is a hill that they want to die on. There's certainly enough women in the world buying makeup that they didn't need to do this. Seth Dillon, over the Babylon Bee, he said, if a guest on the show had said something true and rational like boys can't become girls, Ulta Beauty would have long since deleted the clip and apologized. It's only malignant madness that they'll defend this to the death. Yeah, that's true. That's true. They wouldn't be defending the truth. Only this sort of narrative. Dana Lash said it's woman face. And oh yeah, there's another video that was going around of Dylan Mulvaney that was super, super offensive. Exaggerated, woman-like, I don't know, stereotypical mockery. I didn't show you guys, but I'll have to maybe find it and post it somewhere else. This isn't the sort of dude I think that you should have on a podcast like this, even at all. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you can't be part of girlhood. You can't be part of girlhood. I'm just scrolling through tweets to see if there's any interesting other ones that I want to point out before we go. Jessica O'Donnell said, I have endometriosis, which makes my periods more painful. Which one of you two ladies has advice on how you'd handle difficult periods? Yeah, they can't answer that question. There's a lot of people saying trans women are actually men. Beauty is for everyone, but girlhood is not. We live in a society where actual moms are being called birth givers and men are calling themselves mom. Ulta Beauty really utilizing that hidden reply feature. Yeah, they said they want to open up the dialogue, but they did like hide replies and they did limit replies. So it's just they're getting pushback. They're getting pushback. So if you want to support transgenderism, if you want to support men wearing makeup, you can do that. If you're a beauty brand, you want to sell as much products to everyone as possible, you can find a way to do that, but you don't do that by upsetting women. And you know, being a woman isn't a vibe, it's just a fact. It's just a fact. So I don't know. We live in a weird society. I hope we're gonna face a pendulum swing sooner rather than later. I hope so. God, I hope so. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. Please go to my website, blacktnews.com. Check out different content that I have on my website, different articles, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. That does really help. It costs to stream, it costs from a website to travel, to do all this kind of stuff. So if you would like to support, you can support. I very much appreciate it. If you can't, thank you guys for watching, for sharing, for tagging, for liking. Make sure that you're subscribing across all the different social media platforms. My handle's at Black Tea News, with the exception of Twitter. That one's at True Black Tea. It's black like the color, tea like the drink. Check out different merch on my website. Please support there as well. I'm wearing my Be Better Not Bitter shirt. I love the shirt. Also, I'll get I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For. And also the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of some of this racist stuff on the back. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.